Hello, I'm Jacob Wolf from ESPN Esports, and we're here at South by Southwest at the Longhorn Network in Austin, Texas. I'm joined by Overwatch League Commissioner Nate Nanzer. Nate, how are you doing?
Good, how are you? Thanks for having me.
I'm doing well. So you have a panel which will be later today. This interview will be released after the fact, but you have a panel and you're talking about the Overwatch League with Armina Kimes. Sort of what's going to be talked about today?
Yeah, so we're going to talk a little bit about the success we've seen out of the gate in the 2019 season. You know, last year, the inaugural season, we saw a huge amount of interest in the league. If you remember, on our opening day in 2018, huge spike in viewership. We had a great first week. But even with all that hype and attention for the first year ever, in the 2019 season, we've actually seen a jump in viewership, which is super encouraging. We saw a 30% jump overall in total audience reached in our opening week in 2019 versus 2018. Saw an increase in average minute audience, and the most encouraging data is that it's actually continued. Our week 2 was a 40% year-over-year increase from our inaugural season. So we're seeing really strong momentum, bringing in blue chip brands like Coca-Cola and State Farm, which is super exciting on the business side. And you know, the big question that everybody has about the Overwatch League is, like, okay, you have these city-based teams, but they're all in LA, and everyone lives in LA, everyone plays in LA, and sure, there's watch parties and stuff, but you know, when are they going home? And today, at South by, in my conversation with Mina, we're going to talk about our timeline for that, and we're going to announce that starting in the 2020 season next year, all matches will be played in the home market. So all the teams will be moving home. Every team will host half of their games in a home venue. It's super exciting. I think it's not just a big step for the Overwatch League. I think it's a big step for esports and for esports teams to be able to start to build infrastructure in local markets and create a place where fans have an opportunity to go and connect with other fans and engage with their favorite teams live.
I know this is something, the geolocated part of that is something you all have brainstormed for a very long time of how to make that work. Obviously, it's a little bit more of a larger take than a traditional sports league, which, you know, you travel a little bit more locally or you travel domestically in the United States. This, you have to travel globally. How do you make that easier on these players when they're having to travel from, say, China or the United States?
So one thing, the announcement today is not an announcement that we're going to start working on this. We've actually been working on this for a year and a half and made a lot of progress at the league level and a tremendous amount of progress at the team level, which is why we feel comfortable announcing it. The schedule, first, you know how difficult scheduling is in traditional sports. I mean,
generally,
I think most fans take for granted. It is incredibly complex when you add things like venue availability and travel times and wanting to minimize things like, you know, in the NBA, for instance, they want to minimize back-to-backs and they want to minimize the you know, playing too many games in a 7-day period. So when you put all those factors in, you know, you need really smart people and supercomputers to figure those things out. So ours is extremely difficult because, to your point, we add global in there too. So we have China, we have Korea, we have Europe. So figuring that out and then adding the additional layer of complexity around visas, and it makes for an incredibly complex problem. But we've made a ton of progress, and really I think what the things that we've put in place that will make it work operationally and also minimize the impact on the players, a couple things. So we have our 2 divisions today, Atlantic and Pacific. We will continue with that format going forward. And just like this year, where you play more games within your division than outside of your division, that will continue. So Shanghai is going to play Chengdu more often than they play New York, right? The other thing that we'll do, and I think our stage format really allows us to do this, we're going to build in some breaks as well. So whether that's between stages, whether that's an all-star break, whether it's within a stage, to have the ability for, you know, if somebody has to fly to Korea to play a match, we're not going to have them fly back to the U.S. and play the next day, right? There needs to be some recovery time. So we're building in breaks like that. So it's something we're trying to be super thoughtful around and make sure that the impact on the players is minimized, and that when players do make international trips, they have time to recover. I'd also say it's going to work similar to the way, you know, baseball or basketball works, where you know, the Yankees don't fly out and play the Angels and then fly back. They fly and play play the Angels, and then they go play the A's.
So like
right?
a road show.
Like a swing, right? It's a West Coast swing, it's an East Coast swing. We'll have a China swing. We'll have a Europe swing. So you'll have trips like that, and then you'll also have homestands, similar to, if you're going to be home, you'll be home for a period of time. So really taking a page out of the book of traditional sports to develop our schedule and format, and it's something, like everything that we've done in the Overwatch League so far through a year plus 4 weeks, is constant sort of iteration until we feel like we get something right. And I think the schedule that we'll announce in the coming months, we feel like is pretty good and something that we'll continue to iterate on until we get it right.
So whose financial lift is this? Obviously, from getting players to the certain cities, is that a team responsibility from a financial perspective?
So a couple things. One, the vision for the Overwatch League has always been to get the teams in the home markets. And the reason for that, there's obviously some very clear fan base reasons for that. One, we know that there's millions of fans around the world that want to go to esports events. We see that time and time again, not just in Overwatch, but in across the games industry. So we know that the audience exists. And when we looked at, when we were designing the Overwatch League and we were looking at other traditional sports, it was clear that so much of the economics at the team level were driven by the fact that they have a home venue. They can sell tickets, and not just tickets, but suites and VIP packages and all of those sorts of things, selling merchandise, selling concessions, all of that stuff that they do in the local market is a huge contributor to the revenue that teams generate. You also have local sponsorship. There's no such thing as local sponsorship in esports today. If you look at the team model, teams are all selling global sponsorships with no guarantees around inventory when they're actually playing matches, and it's really global sponsorships and monetizing content and maybe a little bit of merch that esports teams are able to drive revenue on. So if you go look at the P&L of any sports team, there's some of them that are public. You can go download and look at them. The home venue is such a big driver of the economics. So that was always a huge thing for us, where we felt like for esports to really go to the next level, teams need to have a home base where they can, one, engage fans on a regular basis, but two, have more control over their destiny and more opportunity to drive revenue. So we think that's a huge step. So we haven't talked much about the structure, other than we've talked, there's revenue sharing, all the league global deals, et cetera. The teams are responsible for the events that they put on. They're responsible for the venue. Those are not league venues, they'll be team venues. And that's
is the broadcast a league responsibility?
Yeah, so the broadcast is a league responsibility. So we'll still control the broadcast, because we want to create a consistent experience from venue to venue, so that when fans tune in and watch the Overwatch League, it looks the same from a gameplay perspective. If you think about a 2 hour or hour and 45 minute Overwatch League match, the vast majority of the time is gameplay, right? Yep. And so that is what we are expert in, and so we're going to continue to do that. But the teams will be able to create their own footprint in the local market, and that'll be their venue. And that I think is really exciting, because if you think about right now, if you're a Cloud9 fan, there's nowhere you can go, no physical location where you can go to be immersed in all things Cloud9 if you're a diehard fan, right? But the exciting thing is, in 2020, there will be a place you can go to immerse yourself in London Spitfire. And that's really exciting. And by the way, it will take a totally different form in every city. So it's possible, not just in terms of venue size, but in the same way that Wrigley Field is different than Dodger Stadium is different than Yankee Stadium. They all have their own quirks and things that are unique about it. It's an opportunity for teams to start doing that. It's super exciting to see what teams are going to do. And the little things that they'll build in, whether it's fan experiences, whether it's things in the venue. So it's a cool opportunity for that. And we, as a part of this announcement, we're not saying anything about the team venues. That's the team's job, and we want the teams. One of the reasons we want to announce this so soon, almost 11 months before we launch, is that the teams have time to get out there and start telling their story about what they're going to build in their market.
So you mentioned Cloud9. Obviously the London Spitfires is their organization. Is there any restriction for some of these teams that own in other esports leagues under a different name from using the same venue, or is that wide open if they want to throw something at the venue?
The venues are wide open. So if the London Spitfire have a home venue that they use for an Overwatch League match, and 2 nights later they want to host a Hearthstone tournament or a Call of Duty tournament or a Counter-Strike tournament, they're totally welcome to do that.
I think it goes without saying, really, that and this is very well publicized, that the Overwatch League is one of the highest spends sort of for everyone, I think. Obviously, these teams are paying very high franchise fees from $20 million up and on up, right, from Season 1 and Season 2. A lot of these brand sponsors, I think your sales team at Activision Blizzard has done a good job at selling some of the highest priced sales and sponsorships in the business. And then also, you all are spending a lot to make this work, too. Is there a massive sense of responsibility that comes with that for you, making this successful and something that, everyone is sort of contributing to this massive money pot?
Totally. I think, I think about my job, just sort of the two areas that I focus on. One is making sure that we have an awesome product that our fans love and can engage with. Like, that is hugely important, right? We have to make sure that we're giving our fans what they want and giving them great content that they can engage with on a regular basis. But we also talk a lot internally about acting like an owner, and making sure that first and foremost that we're thinking about our owners and making sure that our owners have a path to have it running successful businesses. It's hugely important. I would say, we learned a lot in the first season, in the inaugural season. If you remember, of course you remember, you reported on all of it. We announced, the first 7 teams, which I think you probably had announced.
Beginning of July,
a month before.
Yeah.
We got wolf bombed, but then we had from that was like mid-July we announced that.
Yep.
I think.
Yep.
From there until we ran the preseason in December, which was really a preseason, an opportunity for us to. We'd never done it before.
You had one team that didn't participate.
We need to rehearse. But it was very short window of time between when we announced those teams and when we flipped the lights on at Blizzard Arena. So I would say there's a lot of things that we did that we just didn't have a ton of time in order to plan them out. So this year we had this great opportunity of. We actually had some data and some learnings. We knew what we did in 2018, and we went back and we were able to make a bunch of changes at Blizzard Arena that I don't think really but anyone notices. Very subtle things. You'll even notice like the way that we do halftime now is different, and that's not the point of that change is not because we wanted to save money or anything like that. It's like, let's constantly evolve the show. Let's try new things. Let's make sure that it's not, when someone tunes in, it's not exactly the same week in, week out. Let's make sure that we're constantly trying new things. Bringing in new talent this year was another example of that. But I would say we've really become much more efficient at producing an Overwatch League broadcast than we were in the inaugural season. And it's the same group of people, it's the same team. It's just we now have a year plus of operation under our belt, and we have just become much more efficient. And again, it's because of that sort of mantra internally of thinking like an owner, acting like an owner, and being thoughtful about, to your point, the money that's been invested, the money that not just our team owners are investing, but that our partners are investing, and making sure that it's a great outcome for everybody in the long term.
So then how do you evaluate when you spend too much? Because thinking like an owner, that's a lot of those people think about their returns. And I mean, even one of your owners now is looking to sell their greater organization, both in League of Legends and Overwatch. And, that's only after a year and a half of owning it. At what point do you go, I've spent too much, and I need to scale back? How do you evaluate that?
Yeah. So, well, first, I don't, I haven't heard anything publicly about any team selling. Like there's constant investment rounds being raised, and it's possible that some of those percentages are large percentages. I'm not sure, but I would say we set a budget each year that we look at revenue coming in and the amount of revenue coming in is sort of a lot of times determining the budget, right? We're not just going to go say we want to spend X number of dollars on this thing because we think it is cool. We're going to look at that against the budget with always the thought in mind of that we have partners, 20 partners in our team owners that we're working for. So really, I think it's we've built a team. I think one of the things that I think is unique about the Overwatch League and really Activision Blizzard Esports is I think we're the only game publisher that's built a sports and entertainment organization within a game publisher. So we brought in, you mentioned our sales team earlier, really honestly world-class
they're great.
Team.
They do a good job.
From traditional sports and media world. We're now scaling that team internationally as well. We just hired a woman in China to head up our media sales and consumer products efforts. Who has a great resume. We're looking to scale that globally because you mentioned this earlier. We're a global league. We have an amazing broadcast production and content team that's a mix of people from our traditional sports, action sports, and esports, and sort of bringing those worlds together. So we really rely on the experts that we have across our team to be thoughtful about the money that they're spending on their area of the business. But again, it's all tied to the larger budget, and it's all tied to we obviously are incented to make this work, and we're you mentioned people are investing a lot. We're investing a ton, not just in the league, but in the game as well, and all the infrastructure around it. But yeah, I would say we've talked about this before, you and I. We've seen a lot of success out of the gate, and we have a lot of momentum, but by no means are we taking our foot off the gas.
I think it's very fair to say that all parties involved right now, from the esports perspective in the Overwatch League, teams and the league itself, are not profitable. In terms of net revenue, or the net between revenue and spend is a plus number. At what point do you want all of those parties, the teams and the league, to all become profitable entities?
Yeah, obviously that's a huge goal of ours. We haven't commented publicly on the profitability of the the league or the team at this point, or the teams at this point. But it's obviously a goal of ours, and something I think we're making tremendous progress towards. And we think that the home and away format and getting the teams back in their local markets is going to be a huge step in that direction.
So doing that, getting them away from Blizzard Arena, what happens to Blizzard Arena now?
Great question. So we haven't announced anything publicly, but obviously Overwatch League will not be a Blizzard Arena next year, and we'll have some news coming shortly about what the future of Blizzard Arena is, but we won't be using that facility for Overwatch League.
There was a lot of restructuring at Blizzard recently. There was layoffs of about 100 people from the staff, and I think you've sort of taken a little bit of more of a role than just Overwatch and can oversee a little bit more. What are you doing now?
Well, my focus, the vast majority of my time is spent on looking at 2020. Obviously, we're still in the middle of the 2019 season, and the key beats coming up in 2019 that I'm super focused on. We have our first ever home games in Allen, Texas, not too far from here, the last weekend in April, which is super exciting. The Dallas Fuel, they've already sold thousands of tickets for that event. It's going to be an awesome event. Looking ahead, we have our next homestand in July in Atlanta, and then we're going to move the show down the 10 freeway towards LA Live to do the Valiant's homestand weekend in August, and then grand finals, which we'll announce where that's going to be here soon. So we have some really important milestones in 2019. In 2020, spending a ton of time right now working with our team internally and with our team partners on making sure that we're ready for that. My job as focused on the product of Overwatch League is really thinking about how do we take the show that we make today in Blizzard Arena and move that all over the world, and make sure that we're still delivering the level of quality that I think fans have come to expect from the Overwatch League. It's something I think that I'm personally very proud of, and I know our team's very proud of, is the level of quality of the content that we produce, not just the live show, but all of the content around it, whether that's Watchpoint, whether it's all the branded content that we produce. So still spending a ton of time on that, but you know, also spending some time thinking about the larger, you know, Blizzard Esports portfolio and what the future of that can be as well.
So in February, during the most recent earning call for Activision Blizzard, Bobby and some of the other executives confirmed that there would be a city-based franchise Call of Duty League. You know, looking at that opportunity, how much of a lift is that going to be for you all to put that together after doing one already in the Overwatch League? And is that going to be done by some of the same people that sort of started the Overwatch League in the Activision Blizzard Esports League sort of bubble?
Yeah, so it's a super exciting announcement. It's, you know, city-based Call of Duty League. Call of Duty is an incredible franchise, massive player base, tons of interest. It's really exciting. You know, we've built that team has been built for a while now. There's Johanna Ferris, who I don't know if you've had the pleasure of meeting yet, but that we've announced is the commissioner for Call of Duty, as my job for Call of Duty. You should definitely get some time with her if you have a chance.
Yeah,
she's fantastic. Sure. Came from the NFL. So I know that the team there is super focused on getting something awesome pulled together. And you know, we'll leave it to them to talk to you about it when they're ready.
This week, we reported that those initial conversations for franchise sales started at $25 million, 14 days for a non-binding indication of interest from some of these teams. First, can you talk about that at all? Can you confirm that?
No, other than, you know, what we've announced, which is we're excited to kick off a process for a city-based Call of Duty League, but beyond that, nothing else that we can comment on at this time.
So obviously you do want to expand the Overwatch League, but you're also going to have the sales process for that, and there will be those two things will be simultaneous throughout this year of selling franchises in Call of Duty, but also selling expansion franchises for the Overwatch League. What type of owners are you expecting for both of those, actually?
So I'll speak to Overwatch League, which is my focus. You know, we've said publicly many times our goal is to get to 28 teams. Our conversations, I wouldn't say that there's like a period where we start or stop conversations. We're constantly in conversations. There's a tremendous amount of interest, as you know, in investing in the space. And for us, it's really about finding, especially as we go into 2020, finding partners that have local operating capability, whether that is existing venues, whether it's relationships with existing venues, whether it's a local ticket sales and sponsorship team, whatever those things are that are capabilities that they're not going to have to build, that they already have something to build off of, is going to be incredibly important, because starting in 2020, there isn't going to be a Blizzard Arena. They're going to need to go have their own home venue where they can host matches. So I would say, though, for Overwatch League, that, you know, with the move from 2019 season in LA to 2020 full home and away, I think fans can expect that the 20 teams that exist today will be the 20 teams that we kick off next February with.
Interesting. So you don't think you're going to sell more expansion franchises this year?
I think we're constantly in those conversations. I think with moving to 2020 and making sure that everyone is able to go operate, you know, sort of have operational excellence in their home market, and that we're able to deliver an awesome product. Right now, our plan is to focus on the 20 teams we have today, which, by the way, 20 is a pretty good number.
Of course, yeah. I'm not deducting from that, but you know, I did ask you this last year, and it was answered slightly, but it sort of in the same framework that I thought it would be. Expanding to Europe is really hard, and expanding to Asia outside of China is also very difficult. There's clearly a very different investment mentality in Europe and in other parts of China, or I mean other parts of Asia besides China. How do you sort of convince those people, right? They're way more conservative with their money. This is, like we mentioned earlier, a giant financial spend for them and for the league. And how do you convince some of the people in Germany and some of these other European countries and other parts of Asia?
Well, I think a big step on that process is going to be getting out in the markets and proving the model. You know, I think we've proven that our model is working. The fact that you have thousands of fans around the world who are going and spending money to go to watch parties, to go to a bar, or go to an event center, and actually get together and connect with other fans. I think it's proving that there is something to this geolocation for esports for all the reasons it works in traditional sports. So I think we've proved that, and I think getting out in the markets and proving that there are fan bases that are going to want to go to regular events, that there are fan bases that are going to want to buy merchandise and VIP experiences and all the things that you see in traditional sports, I think is a really important step along the way.